Hello and welcome here to another edition of Best of the West. It is opening day eve here in the Major League Baseball world. Exciting times. I'm your host, Skyler Timmins, joined here along with Kenneth Weber, wearing a Astros hat this week.
Who comes to mind on this opening day eve when you see this Astros logo?
Let's see,
And don't say Vlad Sr. because it's just as
Bartolo
Rocky.
Colon, because we're catching up 1 week later.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I mean, this is so exciting. Like, I think I've been ready in that baseball mood for a while now, and it's just one of those where you want just that whole day to be consuming baseball, and it's always exciting. And, it's like a Christmas Eve for baseball fans. It really is.
Yeah, it'd be nice if everybody could start, but that stupid hurricane had to push the Rockies back a day with Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
But everybody pretty much starting tomorrow. I think that's baseball's goal, is to have just a unanimous everybody playing on opening day, more or less.
Not
quite there yet.
No, it's fun when they align the stars like that. The NHL has been doing that over the past season or two, maybe, where they have all 32 teams playing at the same time. And it's super exciting. I know baseball does that already with kind of the wild card in the last day of the season, but opening day can kind of work the same way, you know? But again, it's just so exciting to see the season kicking off, and that will never change.
Yeah, 14 games will be played tomorrow, so pretty much the entire league except for Tampa Bay and the Rockies. They will start on Friday with their series. So, oh well. But fun times. Baseball season is here. And as we go throughout this episode, we are going to really hit up some headlines and then just get into the season, make some predictions, bold predictions, and point out who's going to be the team MVPs for these guys here in the National League West. So lots going on. And Kenneth, time is of the essence, so let's hop right into it with some headlines at the top of things here. Starting off with, and into everything, kick it off here with the Arizona Diamondbacks. This one's pretty fresh, where we had talked all offseason about what are the Diamondbacks going to do with their glut of starting pitchers, and particularly some of their veterans. The owner had his thoughts on one of these pitchers, and they kind of get a get out of jail free card, so to speak, to solve that problem. As Jordan Montgomery has to get Tommy John surgery. And is this a huge blow for the Diamondbacks, Kenneth, or is it kind of I guess the stars aligned?
Yeah, I think it's more of a relief, I think, for everybody to some degree. I'm sure you never want to root for a guy to get hurt, and obviously injuries being a part of the game are unfortunate. But the timing of this with the soap opera, surrounding Montgomery and the Diamondbacks and kind of his status with the organization, really since the World Series ended last year, the irony of the injury is hard to overlook in this situation. So maybe bullet dodge for Arizona, maybe for Montgomery, missed opportunity to kind of clear the name a little bit. But just with everything that was going on, at least there's some resolution to it now. So there's that.
Yeah, and in spring training, he pitched just 2 games in spring training. One was a good outing, and then the other not so much, and the injury pops up. Just 3 innings pitched, 5 runs allowed, a home run, 2 strikeouts, 3 walks. So a 15 ERA in just that super tiny sample size.
Yeah.
That kind of solves a problem for him, where they can plug somebody else in and just kind of, the Montgomery saga is done in Arizona. They'll just help him rehab, and then it's done.
So it's not like Jordan Montgomery was signed to Javi Baez money. Like, I get why a Detroit Tigers fan is like, hard no on Baez now. The thing with Montgomery that is so interesting is I think the expectations are so skewed for a player that got cashed out of a hot playoff run, hot World Series, hot second half kind of thing. It's not like Jordan Montgomery showed up like Paul Skeens,
Yeah.
And then 2, Jordan Montgomery did all of that to Arizona, and then Arizona turned around and paid him. So I kind of wonder if that's the core of this pimple, in Arizona the whole time, is like, you destroyed us and then we paid you and now you suck. Like, I think that's where they came from, and you get it to a degree, and I think that's what makes it the soap opera. But it's interesting with these guys that really, hit a high bar in the World Series and then pay out and expected to be aces, they rarely are that ace. They never really turn that corner. They just are good pitchers, and that's what Montgomery's
Yeah.
been for the most part.
Yeah, and a good question from Call Me Astro coming in from the YouTube comments, and be sure to hop in here over on YouTube or Twitch in the comments section and give us these like this as he asked, does losing Jordan Montgomery make them less competitive, though? And maybe I would say, Kenneth, just a little bit because we know of his pedigree, what he's done.
Yeah.
But it hasn't just worked out in Arizona thus far, and clearly there's that disconnect and already all that drama we've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely doesn't help.
Yeah.
But now they can move on and just shake the hands of it and focus on who they do have and guys that were already competing for that spot.
It's a silver lining in like
Yeah.
his relationship with the franchise. Overall, you're losing a veteran pitcher, and that doesn't help your chances when you're expecting to be a title contending team. Like it's as simple as that. So absolutely, and it's a good question. But how badly does it hurt them? Not as much as losing Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. He's kind of in that Eduardo Rodriguez tier where it's like we're kind of hoping that this guy gives us something good this year. So I don't think it's a devastating or really that big of a blow for Arizona, to be honest.
Yeah. And so that rotation, as of now, Torey Lovello was saying that they would open the season with Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Brandon Pfaadt, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Corbin Burns. So a lot of known commodities in that lineup or in that rotation. Brandon Pfaadt maybe is a little bit of the question mark is the younger guy, and you're hoping for bounce back years from several of these guys. But you look at that and like, it's not a bad rotation still. It's a pretty solid rotation.
Yeah, the question is really where did Montgomery fit in those names already? Maybe,
Exactly.
like you said, ahead of a Pfaadt, and more likely he was long man insurance for the rotation. Maybe Pfaadt needs some seasoning, as you mentioned. But Montgomery's spot and was not. He didn't have much job security. I'll put it that way in the first place. So, and it's because of his performance. So again, you were hoping if you were Arizona to get something good out of him this year, and now there's just going to be nothing, and you move on. I think it's a pretty easy one, for Arizona to swallow.
Yeah, and as we talk these headlines, we'll just tie them in with our predictions and things with that. So they lose Jordan Montgomery. He's out of the conversation. Oh, best of luck to him in his recovery and everything. But then that leaves with the Diamondbacks. And what can they do in 2025 after that stellar year in 23? Slight disappointment, a slow start in 24, but still a solid team. Kenneth, where do you see the Diamondbacks ending up by season's end as we get ready for 2025?
I think that this is a playoff team, and I would be surprised if it's not. I think we're going to touch on each one of these teams individually. Nobody I expect to take down the Dodgers when it comes to division time, but I do expect the National League West to have at least one other playoff team through the wild card, and I think the Diamondbacks are the favorite to do that. So I expect this to be a playoff team this year, if not title contender, if things go their way.
Yeah, you can because you look at that roster and just a lot of the young talent that they have, hoping for a resurgent Corbin Carroll, who had a pretty good spring. He hit the ground running, which is what you want to see, and hope doesn't have that slow start he did last year. They added some good firepower in Josh Naylor. They've got Corbin Burns. There's a lot to like about this team. Yeah, they can contend for a playoff spot, and unless things go really bad for the Dodgers, yeah, they'll hopefully put their best foot forward in that category, but still contending for that playoff spot.
Yeah. And it's not even that things have to go really bad for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I think that the Diamondbacks are, feel like they should be a safe 90 win team, which is saying a lot, but around that 90 win mark. And hey, if this is a team that reached the World Series 2 years ago, if they turn around and push 95 wins, that's not surprising if they're kind of on the Dodgers' heels. I know we all expect the Dodgers to win somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 games this year, but if they end up with, around 100 wins, that's chaseable for a team. And I think Arizona is in
Mhm.
the best position to kind of be on their heels down the stretch. It's unlikely, but Arizona could do it.
Yeah, looking at some projected stats around for them, Diamondbacks roughly projected around 86 wins on the year. So, like in that ballpark, you're saying close to that 90.
Yeah, I think there's enough lessons learned over the past 2 years about the first half for this team that it's hard for me to believe that they won't be a better team in the first half and still be a very good second half team. They've already shown the great second half run of it. It's just this is the same group that continues to get more experience and also more bolstered with somebody like a Corbin Burns. And well, obviously a Corbin Burns, but it just makes them that much more complete. And I think that their record is going to show it. So I think that 86 undersells them just a touch.
Yeah, and I think that'll be the key is being able to come out of the gate strong because they could have they had one of the best records in the second half last season, or the best. If they hadn't had just that sluggish first half, they're probably in the postseason again last year, and who knows what they can do. But if they can avoid that coming out of the gate strong, don't your stars can't go slumping. So Corbin Carroll has to perform out of the gate, along with the others guys, and hope that your pitching can stay healthy, and these veterans can perform, get back to where they were before the hiccups last year. Yeah, you're sitting in a pretty good spot like you were in 2023, where you were kind of surprised you had as much success. Now you have the experience, and now you have the expectations. We can reach the playoffs, and we can make a push. We can handle anybody in front of us. If we can just get into the dance.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously that showed enough in 2023 with what they were able to do. But if you look, they're in April and May last year in 2024, they were 9 games below 500 during that stretch. When you look at their record in July and August of last year, they were 18 games over 500. So they do a great job of being able to make up lost ground when they need to, but maybe just don't lose all that ground in the first place, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um,
You can stumble at the start of the race, but don't fall flat on your face.
Yeah, and having a Corbin Burns, every fifth day, that's a rock. That is you have a good chance to win a ball game that day, kind of thing, and that could be really impactful in those early season droughts that they've experienced over the past few seasons.
Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting year here for the Diamondbacks. So before we get into the bold take, who do we think will be the team MVP for the Arizona Diamondbacks?
Corbin Carroll. I think
Yeah.
Corbin Carroll is just going to be. He's just too good. I'm tempted to say a couple of guys. I think Corbin Burns can be immediately right in the Cy Young conversation this year. I think it's a more crowded field than the NL than the American League, and I think Ketel Marte is still an all-star player. But Corbin Carroll, I think, is going to be that the Clayton Kershaw of pitching. Now I know Kershaw is a very high level Hall of Fame level, but Kershaw was never Paul Skeens to watch. Was never
Mhm.
blowing you away. Corbin Carroll can kind of be like that, I think. Just steady Eddie, just rocking the gaps and putting up multi-hit games consistently and playing good consistent defense without being overly flashy. So I think Carroll's just the dude for them. I really do.
Yeah. That's kind of where I lean to as well. He had that hiccup, but he is, if he can hit that ground, because he could be an MVP candidate this year if he can just be consistent enough. Because now we had that really good freshman year, had a bumpy sophomore year, but he squared it out in that second half. Now if he can just put the two halves together, put it all together, boom, you're sitting pretty in MVP candidate. I think I talked about that a couple weeks ago on a solo show. He's got that potential definitely in him. So yeah, team MVP, and yeah, like Astro's saying, Corbin Burns, it's a pretty safe pick. A really safe pick for the next category of this team Cy Young. I'm more inclined to go with the with one himself, Cy Young, Corbin Burns himself, who has a little bit of experience in that area, anyways.
Right, no kidding. It's one of those where he's too good compared to his peers to not say Corbin Burns. Very underrated though. I think Zach Gallen is one of the more underappreciated
Mm-hmm.
co-aces in the league, or top of the rotation caliber guys. So maybe Gallen goes out there and puts up a surprise, Kurt Schilling to Corbin Burns's Randy Johnson season. But again, Burns is he's that good, and I think he still has a couple in the top 5 on the Cy Young ballot seasons left in him.
Yeah, most definitely. So yeah, Corbin Burns, that's a pretty easy one. Nice safe answer, just like Astro was mentioning.
You pay him $1 billion, he better be pretty good.
Yeah, he better, or
Yeah.
else we break thumbs.
Looking at you, Jordan Montgomery.
Accidents happen.
Anywho.
But last one, a breakout star or any breakout stars coming into 2025 that could pop up here for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
I've really liked Dre Jameson for a while. I can't remember if he's on the shelf. I don't believe he is. I believe they had another arm go down, but Jameson.
I believe he got sent down.
I know, but so in terms of not undergoing Tommy John, though, I believe Blake Watson is who I'm thinking of. That's under the knife for that. Justin Martinez would be the other answer with it. Both of them I see as electric shutdown bullpen arms that just kind of need to harness it. I think Martinez is the more popular name, and Jameson is being stuck in between. Can he make it as a starter? We're giving that one more chance kind of thing. But once he becomes a full-time reliever, if that's the path it goes, I think it could quickly become, an attention-grabbing late-inning reliever.
Yeah. And I think for me, I know he's 29 years old, but AJ Puck kind of fits in that same category with Justin Martinez there in that bullpen where, he finally gets that full reign of, all right, go out and close these games out for us. He started to do that in Miami in 2023, got those 15 saves, comes over and has a pretty decent, when he comes over to Arizona, pretty good rest of the way. But you give him a full reign with that full season in Arizona's bullpen, makes losing like a Paul Sewald or any other closer they had a lot easier to stomach when you've got at least one, and luckily they have 2 guys who could really just become a star breakout, duo at the back end of their bullpen.
Yeah, Puck, I've been waiting for that Andrew Miller type ascent for the past couple of seasons, but he's already put himself as a very good major league reliever. One thing that I think is at least kind of worth touching on when we're in this area of discussion is Pavin Smith. Christian Walker was essentially replaced straight up by Josh Naylor, but I think that this is going to open up some ABs or possibly a path to maybe a little bit more time for Pavin Smith, who's someone who's always kind of stuck around as a former first-round pick, but eventually may click. So he's an interesting name, but this is probably a last chance you kind of year for Peyton Smith more than anything.
Yeah, 29 years old, and it's kind of him and Randall Grichuk splitting time in that DH spot with Lourdes Gurriel Jr. slotting in there as well when he needs to. So he's on the bubble. This is kind of a make or break year for Pavin Smith.
He's Spencer Torkelson light is what came to mind the entire time, because like everybody's saying that about Torkelson, but Pavin Smith kind of the same deal, just left-handed.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff here for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But Kenneth, before we move on, what's one bold prediction you have for the Diamondbacks for the 2025 season?
I predict that the Diamondbacks will win over 90 games. Why not?
There you go.
I don't know how bold that is after turning around and saying that I think that there's a 90-something win team. All right, if I want to get really off the rails with it, I think no one closer is going to have more than 20 saves for Arizona. I think they're going to kind of have a committee approach going on with this. It's going to be fairly effective, but I think they're just going to have a scattershot of teens of saves across their stat sheet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. I think for me, I'm just looking at Josh Naylor. I think he just really taps into that power even more so and can put up over 30 home runs in 2024 in Cleveland. Arizona's a little bit more friendly hitter environment, and he'll be playing Coors Field a little bit more regularly. I think he can get up close to 40 home runs.
And the pool shots alone.
Yeah, he's going to put up enough where they're going to not worry about they lost Christian Walker, and then they back up the dump truck for him.
Mhm.
The old big dumper out in Seattle, they back that truck up and sign him to an extension.
So my thing with it is there's kind of a Kyle Tucker situation to this too.
Yeah.
You didn't pay like the greatest price in the world to get Naylor, but it's for 1 year. So how close is Arizona to that extension, or is this a tryout year
Yeah.
before free agency? In which case, if it goes Naylor's way and he's on the MVP ballot, he's probably hitting the market. So do it or get off the pot.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think those balls are going to be flying, and he's going to put up a big. It's like it'll be like when JD Martinez got traded over to Arizona and he just went off.
That was
I think it's going to be that electric just change for Naylor, and he's just going to have that JD Martinez type effect.
I think it's an awesome fit and like for an awesome location. I think there are a ton of things to like about it. I just want it to be long term.
Yeah.
I want to know that instead of just, hey, you remember that 1 year where Josh Naylor went ham in Arizona before he signed, in San Francisco and never looked fun again?
Yeah.
I would like it to be a consistent long term thing, but it is something that I'm definitely looking forward to in 2025.
Absolutely. Give him a contract like Anthony Santander got. No, that seems like in the right ballpark, somewhere around there.
Oscar money.
Yeah, it can work. You can make it happen. But yeah, Arizona Diamondbacks, a lot of fun stuff with them. Probably like we're saying, second or third there in the division. It's just the nature of the beast when it comes to the National League
likely.
West.
But if anybody's going to win this division, not named Dodgers, it's going to be Arizona, I think.
Yeah, I think they have that best chance. That would be a bold prediction. They take them to a game 163.
There you go.
There we go.
And then have to turn around and play the wild card.
Yeah, then they go play the
Rocky
Cubs
style
wild card.
Yeah.
And then they get swept in Milwaukee by the Brewers.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I've seen this movie before.
Yeah, this seems oddly familiar.
Mm-hmm.
But
still, though, Arizona, man, they should be a playoff team. Like that's the fun part.
Yeah, that's the expectation. A lot of fun stuff out in the desert. And hey, it's fun to lead off with them here in this episode. Moving along here, let's move on to that top team in the division. Let's move over to the Dodgers. They currently hold their 2-0 lead in the division after those games in Tokyo because they decided to make them regular season games instead of just spring break exhibitions, but whatever. But the big one is Mookie Betts is still kind of dealing with an illness. He feels fine. He just can't. He's just not able to stomach anything. He can't eat, and he's lost like 15 pounds, which is hard to regain over the course of a full season.
No
just
kidding.
with everything baseball players are doing. So Mookie Betts, just this mysterious illness. He's like, hey, I haven't been diagnosed with anything yet. You don't want to sound the alarm bells, but is it something that Dodgers fans need to be worried about? Just Mookie's health, or just the change in his physique this close to opening day?
Yeah, I think it's alarming for anybody. Anytime you hear you shed 20 pounds, it's not the thing that you assume is the healthiest for a professional athlete already there, unless they're like a defensive lineman where it's just like big man's got to get down a little bit and then you're happy. But everybody else, it's no bueno. I feel like this is a story we typically don't hear about, but this one we are. And so I'm not overly worried about it necessarily. I don't think that Mookie Betts is typhoid Mary and it's gonna, be the ground zero for something going on. But if Mookie comes out of the gate and struggles and looks sluggish, I don't think anybody is going to be surprised whatsoever. And if he quickly, is put in a position to miss time, I think that's the thing for LA where it's okay, we can probably survive without Mookie, but hopefully this is not a quarter of a year thing. This is an equivalent of, okay, he's seeing a doctor about his elbow. I think he'll be able to pitch, but his start has been delayed. How long is he going to be out? That's kind of the feeling with Mookie just in terms of his top form.
Yeah. He's saying it's just hard to fathom not eating and going to play a game. So it looks like I'm just going to be light for a little bit. Maybe I play uphill a little bit for the beginning of the season. But no, I just want to play, man. I'm tired of sitting, tired of throwing up, tired of doing all this. I really just want to play. Yeah, you feel for the guy because it's
Yeah.
no fun when you get that kind of sickness where you're just up chucking all the time. And
Yeah, I mean, dude's got neuro or something, and it's awful. Like you absolutely feel for him on a human level. But Mookie doesn't get to just sit on his couch and drink ginger
yeah,
ale and wait to feel better and use his PTO. So that's the weird part about it all. Again, I think I trust LA to manage the situation just fine. And maybe we get a quicker sneak peek at Hae-Sung Kim, than we thought we would, uh, as a part of this movie situation. So it's weird, and I think we usually don't hear about these things, but it's just going to be an inauspicious start, I think, for Betts and the Dodgers.
yeah, yeah. And hopefully he's had it for 2 weeks now, so missed the Tokyo games. Hopefully he's turning the corner here pretty soon and gets back to feeling better and can start eating because he's not that big in the first place. Like what, a $170 something or whatever? How much he weighs?
Mhm.
$180 something. So
Yeah, this
soaking
isn't
wet.
down and done 20 pounds, which
Yeah.
was a kneecap.
This isn't Pablo Sandoval. This is old Mookie Betts. So boy.
Yeah. Yeah. As Astro points out, there's a lot of things that will go into it with Betts and the Dodgers. So it's one of those things that's just worth keeping an eye on right now.
Yeah.
It's not like Jared Jones with Pittsburgh where he's seeking the second opinion about the elbow. I don't think they're to that level of worry about Betts yet.
Yeah. So not too much to worry about with the sickness. Everybody gets sick. Everybody in spring training, it makes its run every year, and you just hope you just don't. You hope it doesn't hit you. Which
I guess you hope if you're the Dodgers that your whole clubhouse isn't wiped in the first couple of weeks or
yeah,
months of the season. That would be unfortunate, I guess. We see that happen every now and then in baseball, but again, it's not something we always hear about too. So,
mm-hmm.
but just you hope you don't have a 2 week, 3 week stretch where there's no Ohtani, Freeman, and Betts. That's a rough go.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Maybe to start he's a little bit more contact, more than power, because he's still got to bulk up a little bit and get some food in that boy. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
He'll
If anybody, the last one to touch on this, if anybody's malleable enough to make it work, it's Mookie too.
yeah yeah
Mookie might just be like, I didn't feel good, so I just turned around and hit 360 with 9 home runs. You know,
yeah. I'm just gonna throw out 15 hits during this series. I don't need to hit home runs.
yeah, he's just a station to station, but one of the greatest station to station seasons of all time.
But he is predicted to be in that opening day lineup at shortstop. Tommy Edman over at second base, and then in that outfield, a projected lineup here for the outfield and for them in the outfield here on Thursday will be predicting Kike Hernandez in left field for opening day. Teoscar Hernandez out in right, and then Andy Pages in center field. But nothing too surprising when you look at the Dodgers lineup, firing on all cylinders that we talked about last week in Japan. Pitching rotations looking good. So you look at the powerhouse that is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Who would be the team MVP for this team?
I think Freddie Freeman is still their best hitter. I think he is somebody offensively that I want to attribute a lot to, and I want to have that answer with. But I think Ohtani is still just going to be God mode. And we talked about Corbin Carroll being better than the rest of the field. That sentiment applies to Ohtani, but the rest of the world. And so it's hard not to put that as the MVP.
Yeah, you want to look and hope it's somebody else
Yeah,
in a sense,
Freeman's the
but
heart of this team to me, but Ohtani is clearly the best player
yeah,
ever.
whereas Ohtani, and then if he eventually, when he does get back to pitching,
Hmm.
it's he's just hitting you from both fronts where he can
Yeah,
carry your team in a given game, especially when he gets back on the mound. But who knows with Ohtani, the pitching side, who knows? But offensively, he's still gonna do his thing, and just with the guys that are hitting in front of him, behind him, it just gives him so much better protection. Where he's, it's so much
yeah,
easier to pitch to him, or it's harder to pitch to him, I guess.
yeah. The lineup doesn't do you any favors, but it's a very clear 40-40 almost guarantee. And I don't know if there is such a thing, otherwise. Bobby Witt probably feels the next closest to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the level. And it's so hard to imagine anybody else on or near that level. So you can't say enough good things about Ohtani just offensively for what he does. And then the pitching is going to be added in eventually too. I don't think LA is going to put them in the position that the Angels did, where it's you have to also be the man on the mound.
Yeah.
And he'll just go out to get to be the dude whenever, he's needed. So I think every now and then we're going to see the pitching show up and be dominant, but it's no longer going to be wishing for 30 starts out of him or anything like that.
Yeah. Do we see him? Do you think he replicates that production of the 50-50 like he did last year? Or do we see kind of maybe a decrease in both those areas?
I don't. I think eventually the speed starts slowing down, but I think we're still a couple of years away from that. Maybe if a larger workload was going on with his work on the mound, that could cause some deterioration. But I think he's still on pace to do it again, as asinine as that sounds. I don't expect a 50-50 season by anybody, by any means, but if Ohtani came out this year and threatened 60-60, I wouldn't be blown away and surprised. Like, it'd be a crazy historic chase and absurd numbers, but he proved he could do 50-50, and I didn't think that was possible. So 60-60, maybe. I think it's more trending upwards than down still for Ohtani offensively.
Yeah. Hey, Kenneth, I put up 150 home runs in my Road to the Show career. So get on my level, Shohei Ohtani.
How many stolen bases did you get?
I don't know. I simmed through those parts. So.
I was about to say, do you even play the base running? Because it's brutal.
Yeah, it's awful.
I stole 30 bases, but every time I rounded third, I just started going towards home and then back to third and then back to home. So
yeah, good point here. Ohtani had said 50-50 was possible because he didn't have to focus on pitching much. So, yeah, but 40-30 kind of split, something like that. Maybe
probably
not the 50-50, but he'll always challenge that.
Yeah.
Especially because players will even continue to maybe pitch him a little more carefully, try not to give him stuff too good to hit, but it's Ohtani, so
I wonder how much longer into this contract he pitches, or just like into his career in general, because you got to think one more, especially if it's elbow, you got to call it right on pitching.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't seem to affect his hitting, so why not cut him open? He seems to do fine with that, but I don't know. I don't know if this is what he's gonna look like, because it's been a while since we've seen Ohtani on the mound.
Yeah.
And how much is he gonna be pussyfooting on the workload, the redlining on pitches, stuff like that? Is there gonna be anything holding back to try to get some more long-term insurance on that arm? I'm curious about Ohtani, the pitcher, because I feel like there's still a decent amount of unknowns about that, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's probably just going to pull up one day. He's like, well, I can't pitch with my right hand anymore, so we're going lefty full time. I throw 102.
Yeah, Billy Wagner is somehow coming out of him too. Who knew? If anybody will do it, but it's an interesting thought. Now, do the Dodgers really need Ohtani, the pitcher? Meh, that's debatable. But yeah, that's one of the appeals about him.
Yeah. Yeah. Or at some point, do you try to evolve him from beyond just a DH and hopefully we can get him to start playing in the field a little more.
Yeah.
But
gosh, how many career innings does he have in the field? I feel like he's been like the Sasquatch of it. Yeah. Every time you see Ohtani out there in the right field, there's just it's like Game 7 of the World Series.
Yeah, looking at his fielding stats, it's not going to be many.
Shouldn't have asked this question right away.
He
has 7 career games in the outfield. That's it. He doesn't even have a full game's worth of outfield.
Third innings.
Yeah, so maybe, but I'm not holding my breath. We've had a couple of years for this to be a thing. Now, I get he hasn't been able to throw, but I think at this point they really don't care about Shohei Ohtani, the outfielder.
Yeah. Hey, Astro gives an idea here. First base will be open in a little while. There you go.
Makes sense. Until somebody cleats Ohtani in the Achilles, then we're like, not doing that anymore. But what
Yeah.
wider bases?
But yeah, team MVP. A lot of conversation there on a roundabout way to saying he'll be the team MVP, at least on my end, or Freddie Freeman, like you're saying. One of those guys, co MVPs, we'll say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say any one guy will be the definitive MVP of the team itself.
I
There's
mean,
so many things that go into make them better, make them good.
totally. Yeah, totally. It's open to interpretation, but at the end of the day, if you pick the guy to win the MVP of the National League, he's
Yeah.
probably the MVP of that team too, and that's the case with Shohei Ohtani. Question for you though is Cy Young side. I don't think Ohtani's the Cy Young, so who do you have for them?
Honestly, for me, I'm going Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He no, he dealt with some of the injuries last year, but when he was healthy, it was still a pretty solid year for him in his
Mhm.
first year in the major leagues. Now that he's accustomed to it and has made the transition in, I think this year might be a time where he can really then pop off and really lead this team, especially if he can stay healthy. I think he can help carry this team in that rotation as a legit true ace. Yeah, they have Glass now, they have Blake Snell, but there's always concern. They're going to do their thing, but I think Yamamoto will be that workhorse, kind of dominant ace to help lead this team.
Yeah. I like the pick of Yamamoto. I'm curious about like kind of the ceiling with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I like the reasoning for it, which is why I think it's Blake Snell to me, just because I think out of all the pitchers, one of them needs to kind of go wire to wire. One of them needs to be there the entire way through. And I think ultimately whoever that guy is going to end up being the team Cy Young.
Yeah.
And so I think Snell is just best suited to do that. The thing with Blake Snell is like 1 out of every 3 years, he's like a Haley's Comet, where it's just a bad streak that happens, and then otherwise he's awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can just avoid that one, rough, tumultuous year, I think he's going to be pretty awesome for LA this year and do it, with a lot of consistency every 5 days.
You just hope that will the Dodgers teach him how to walk fewer batters?
Yeah.
Because
It's
once he
wild.
learns that, those 11.79 K per nine projection for
Mhm.
this year, that's going to go up more.
It's such a weird career because Blake Snell is essentially like, what if you just had a reliever that throws it all over the place, but you let him pitch forever? And it pitched 7 innings in a game, and it doesn't get hit, but the problem is it might hit you,
Yeah.
sometimes. And so Snell is just weird because he has the type of career that you expected, like a Randy Johnson to have,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody else who's just massive and wink Chris Sale. With Chris Sale's his elbows and knees and all over the place, but somehow he was able to command it. And Blake Snell wasn't able to figure that out while having a clean looking delivery. So it's wild to me. That's just my tangent on Blake Snell being an abnormality of a pitcher.
Yeah. He's effectively wild at times too. But
Yeah.
man, they even tune that up. I'm sure they can help tune that up even just a little bit. Makes them
Yeah.
even more dangerous and looks like their signing is even more of a bargain.
It's just wild though, man. It's left-handed starting pitching Peter Fairbanks. It's crazy. So it's Snell is an interesting one to me, but I think again it's a good fit for the Dodgers. I think it's everything that they wanted the Trevor Bauer acquisition to be, minus the Trevor Bauer, you know?
Minus the personality.
Yeah, so I think Snell is that.
Yeah. I, yeah, I think both of them at the top of that rotation stay healthy throughout the season. Huge. Co-Cy Youngs again, just
Hmm.
like MVPs. A
Yeah.
breakout
Sasaki.
player. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why not? Because this is a perfect leeway into it because Sasaki is the wild card. Would it surprise anybody after watching him pitch if Sasaki comes out and throws 150, probably more like 130 spectacular innings, where it's like, yeah, I know it wasn't the workload, but it was a 2.05 ERA, you know?
Yeah.
So Sasaki, he showed glimpses. It's a wild horse right now, but if it gets tamed a little bit and can be consistent, like we were talking about with Snell, whoo boy, that's some big stuff right there, and could challenge someone like Paul Skeens, and that's really saying something.
Yeah, yeah, a good breakout year I think for Sasaki. Could be fun. It'll be fun to watch and just see how they handle him throughout the year and how it works out for him. Uh, Other guys maybe I look at it like an Andy Pajes gets full reign there, maybe out in center field, gets just let loose, see what he can do. I think that would be could be a good one. No matter how much I dislike Andy Pajes, just when watching him in rookie ball, no matter how much I dislike, he was just the enemy. Kenneth working for the Orem Owls in 2019. Andy Pajes was the enemy when he was on the Ogden Raptors.
Nostalgia, it'll never fully go away.
Yeah,
But
same with Alex Verdugo.
Yeah, right. Pages is in that Josh Outman position from last year, where it's like
Yeah.
you're going to be given the opportunity, and if you run with it, you're going to be right in the middle of the best team in baseball. But you got to perform to stay in the spot. So it's not a make or break or anything. I don't think Pages is going to be exiled from the franchise if he doesn't hold down the starting position. But I think the opinion of Pages could really change by the All-Star break if he's just kind of, not cutting it for a World Series aspiring team. I think one name that's worth bringing up in this discussion, a forgotten name, is Dustin May. The same way we've seen Ohtani pitch in quite a while. I remember watching Dustin May blow out, watching that game. Dude, the eye test with Dustin May, that sinker is disgusting. Like, there could be a breakout for Dustin May where he's finally healthy and he puts together 30 starts and gets some Cy Young talk. That's always been there with May. So he's a bit of a wild card for this rotation too, but not as big as some of the other names.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. It's been around since 2019, but the starts have been diminishing since that 2019. Just 9 in 2023, and then the arm goes out on him. So, yeah, hopefully he can finally get in there.
He's kind of one of those guys too, and that's not to say that he is this, but he's only 27. That would it have surprised you though that if he was like 24? It's just one of those where it's like I feel like this guy's been around forever, kind of guys, but he's never really quite, achieved that peak. Now he could end up being Noah Syndergaard and just never quite getting there too. But that's what makes him the breakout candidate, and the stuff is there, man. If you've never watched Dustin May pitch, give it a try one time because it's like watching Brandon May's sinker, but like times 1,000. Or Brandon Webb's, excuse me.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of those. Real quick here, a bold prediction for the Dodgers.
The Dodgers break the all-time win record. Why not?
There you go.
I never thought that a team could lose the most games in a season, and White Sox did that last year. And I never thought a team could win 117 games in a season. So if a team could do it, this Dodgers team kind of looks like a team that could do it.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I'll roll with it as well. I don't really have much else.
Yeah,
but,
the Dodgers will be good. That's a surprise.
Yeah.
The Dodgers will be really good.
The bold would be like injuries decimate their roster and they miss the playoffs. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
That's the bold other way you can go with them.
That's the boldest thing. I don't know. California sinks into the ocean and the Dodgers miss the playoffs. It's going to take something pretty monumental for
California sinks in the ocean because of Cascadia, but the Dodgers still make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it happened in Game 3 of the NLCS, so technically the Dodgers still made the playoffs. Yeah, Dodgers will be good, man. It's just okay. Here's one that could maybe happen. That would be a hot take, and it's funny because it's in the reverse order. No Dodger wins an award this year. It could be something maybe Ohtani misses an extended period of time and Bryce Harper goes ham and he's the clear NL MVP. There's no quite pitcher there. And the defense, nobody's really spectacular enough. Silver Slugger would probably be hard, but maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, that would be definitely a good one. But Dodgers will be good, and we've spent a lot of time with them. Here, moving along here, These episodes are just getting longer, Kenneth.
I
We
know it's
talk too
fucking weird.
much.
Sorry.
It's all good.
It's gonna
uh,
get to the Padres and be depressing.
yeah. Oh, well, we'll go to the Giants here real quick.
Okay.
Big one real quick before we get into their stuff. Looked like the Giants City Connects kind of leaked potentially. They're one of the teams getting a new one this year. I think Diamondbacks are also getting a new one, and the Rockies are getting a new one this year.
Mhm.
Uh, but the Giants, did you see those?
I have not yet.
Yeah.
So I didn't hate their last ones. I'll say that. Like we'll be able to put it up on the board, but I didn't hate their last ones. I'm also kind of a curmudgeon when it comes to the City Connects because I think most of them look stupid. So let's see how
Mm-hmm.
this goes.
Yeah. Let's see if I
um,
can pull these up, or at least
good
I'll
live
I'll
TV right
share a
now.
link to you in our chat if you can look at these.
But yeah, so San Francisco with a new City Connect, I don't think is going to be. I don't know. The City Connects are a whole different conversation because it's also in a 2-year cycle and everything. But San Francisco for a whole, I don't, I don't think that this is going to be a great team this year.
Yeah.
Kind of coming out and saying it. I think they're going to have a losing record this year.
Yeah. We're just kind of not a standout team, but just kind of a middle of the pack, just kind of like a team in the
Hmm.
middle of it. You know, they didn't. I don't feel like there's still holes on that roster. Like I like some of those upgrades or some of those additions, like a Willie Adames and locking up Matt Chapman, but then they didn't do much else aside from adding Justin Verlander, who he'll be okay. He'll be fine. He'll be
Sure.
just old man Justin Verlander.
Hmm.
But like you're saying, it's not going to be a standout team.
Yeah. I don't think that they're going to completely bottom out, but I don't think that this team is going to be as competitive. I think as everybody believes. I think if you threw this roster into the shuffle in the National League Central, you'd be kind of talking about the same tier of teams.
Mm-hmm.
They would fit right into that conversation. So, but I also think that I think that Buster Posey is going to be doing a lot of inventory this year, and I think that they might be very aggressive in reshaping their roster and giving it a bit of a facelift. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that yeah, they might have to suffer some ugly baseball for a period of time, but they might just rip that band-aid this year a little bit.
Yeah, it's a team that still needs some more. It's kind of still stuck in that transition of what the old regime did and now what Buster Posey wants to do.
Hmm.
And so it'll take a little bit of time, but I think probably big sellers at the deadline. If we want to get our bold predictions out before, yeah, Giants will be sellers at the deadline.
Yeah. I'm going to say that this will be the last season where you have Mike Yastrzemski, Lamont Wade Jr., and Wilmer Flores on the roster. I think this is going to be like that's the old guard that they're going to be moving on from a little bit. And I think that it's going to be all three. I think they're moving on after this year, if not during this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, that's the facelift that's going on. You feel Adames and Chapman are part of the next team, but they're going to really start taking some pieces out that are not. I think they're smart enough to do that, as opposed to like the Rockies that sit on their hands all the time when those
Yeah,
times come.
yeah, because and it's same with that rotation of, well, Robbie Ray, if he's doing okay, but we're not in it, move him on from him.
I'm not
Verlander,
in
same
it on
thing.
Robbie Ray. I like a lot of people. I feel like are thinking that there's a. When did he win the Cy Young? Was that 22 or something like that?
Yeah,
He's a
whenever
very
he
forgettable
joined.
Cy Young winner, and that's where I'm going with this. I don't see it with Robbie Ray anymore. But if you're banking on Robbie Ray to be your three or something, look at Toronto the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that's a good reflection of why they're not in the best spot right now.
Well, yeah, it's like if Robbie Ray's even doing, it's part of that trading guys away and stuff. If
Mhm.
he's doing okay and you can get some for him, go for it. Do what you can
If it
to,
goes to the trade side, the thing with Robbie Ray too is there is some money that's involved in that one too. So that one makes it a little different. But in terms of like pointing to why you don't think that the Giants are going to be good, honestly, if Robbie Ray is doing it, this is a team that's going to be closer to contending than not. So I think some other wheels have to fall off. But I think Robbie Ray is a perfect example of why I don't think this team is going to be in a good position, which makes it harder to sell off a Robbie Ray or Lamont
Yeah.
Wade or a Wilmer Flores. So it's a dual, a double-edged sword on that one a little bit, because the reason why they're bad is why they can't sell these guys off.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. He's got that one more year on his contract for 2026. So maybe stuck with one more year. We'll see what happens with him. But
Yeah, it's what
yeah.
makes him unique. But overall, I agree on the sentimentality of selling off. It's just you've been kind of kicking the can down the road with these veterans. These veterans become more expensive the longer you do it too, which makes it harder to move on from, which is why they typically get released, when they're clearly
Mm-hmm.
over the hill or past their prime, as opposed to working out a trade with these guys, unless it's a money for money deal.
Yeah.
And I think they're just kind of approaching that point. And I think Posey taking over that's what I mean by ripping the band-aid.
Yeah. They'll do some, but yeah, not a whole lot to talk about with the Giants. It's just kind of like,
Mid.
yeah. There's not much
Yeah.
to be excited about.
Justin
You look at that,
Verlander, you
yeah,
know, maybe it's
chasing
the
down
retirement.
3,500 strikeouts.
Yeah, maybe it's the retirement parade. It's going to be weird that he does it in San Francisco, but maybe this is the retirement parade year. Maybe the Colorado Rockies go out and give a rocking chair of broken bats to Justin Verlander for no reason. That's my bold prediction.
I'm like, yeah, we barely ever interacted with you, Justin.
Yeah.
But
In your one career start at
yeah.
Coors Field in 2012.
Hey, it's an interesting one. Making the roster, though, they selected the contract of Christian Koss, former Rockies infielder or former Rockies prospect.
Hmm.
They selected his contract just today, add him to the big league roster. So good for him.
Yeah.
They
Hey,
acquired
congrats.
him from Boston last year and last March last year. So good for him.
Yeah, there have been some fun stories that have been coming out about guys breaking camps. I think it was with the Yankees, the pitcher, the former Uber driver and science teacher and stuff like that. So it's always fun when you kind of hear a perseverance story.
Mm,
And Rockies had one a few years ago with Daniel Bard. So
yeah.
awesome. Personally, when it comes to that role, I'm more interested in Casey Schmidt for them. I think that that's someone who could surprise some people and start taking some playing time if this team is underperforming as a whole. So,
Yeah.
kind of a sneaky good bat that might be there in Casey Schmidt.
Yeah. Could be one of those breakout stars. Uh, you can look a lot of like Heliot Ramos. A lot of those younger guys, I think, are candidates
Hmm.
to be kind of those breakout stars, have a good year. Uh,
Do you have
probably got
anybody in mind?
not necessarily uh, more of like, I think like Jung Ho Lee. I actually look at him
That's,
like we only got to see a small glimpse. Hopefully now he can hit the ground running in 2025, stay healthy, and make good on that contract, so we can finally see what he can do with full reign.
yeah, I think that that's the easy answer, the obvious answer
Yeah,
that sits on this roster is, they didn't necessarily cheap out on any sort of deal. I mean, I think it was something to the effect of 88 million, 90 million or something that they dished out for Lee. So they traded, they paid a pretty good penny for this guy, and you just didn't really get to see much last
yeah,
year. You're expecting this to be your center fielder in what is a very enormous center field, and that's saying something because you have Coors Field in the same division. So it's a big piece that they kind of need to find out how well they hit on.
mm-hmm.
So that's a good thing to watch in 2025. And whether or not he's a breakout star is going to go a long way in determining the health of the Giants currently, too, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then just any number of maybe some of their younger pitchers, like a Landon Roper, a Hayden Birdsong. We talked about the old guys in the rotation, like a Verlander or Robbie Ray. Well,
Yeah.
you hope maybe some of these other guys can force the issue and knock down the door and say, "Hey, no, we deserve a spot here on
Hmm.
that in that rotation."
Yeah, I always preach Kyle Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's going to be very much Mr. Consistent in a very pitcher friendly environment. So I think it's a really good pitcher in a perfect place. Um, Another one is Jordan Hicks. I think it was easy to kind of poke fun at the reliever conversion. Um, project that they did last year, but it worked out pretty well, honestly. Yeah. And so maybe there's another level with him, and he is truly kind of a number 2 type of guy. But if we're looking at this rotation, I remember when we were talking earlier on in the offseason, boy, if they lose Logan Webb, you feel way differently about this pitching staff. That's how important he is. So if we're talking Cy Young for this, you got to think it's Logan Webb, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Unless it's Justin Verlander dips into the fountain of youth again, but
yeah, somebody has to really surprise you to overtake Logan Webb because he's just that much of a fixture. I venture to say maybe no player is more important on this whole roster than Logan Webb.
Yeah, no, he sets that tone, and when you pitching has always been a strength for the Giants in their history. When they're really good teams, they've been carried by pitching because offense has always kind of been good enough to generate runs.
Yeah.
But
they're the opposite of the Rockies. They're never going to be in an offensively friendly environment unless you have, steroid Barry Bonds going ham. But otherwise, they have to do it that way.
Yeah. So yeah, if you lose a Logan Webb, then you kind of get into a little bit of our chances kind of that's a kick in the pants.
Yeah, and you don't have a buffer anymore of a Kevin Gossman necessarily.
Yeah.
Is Justin Verlander that? Is Robbie Ray that? Is Kyle Harrison or Birdsong ready to jump in and maybe be a little bit more of that safety net for Logan Webb? Because right now it kind of feels like he's doing that tight wire without much of one, and you just hope a Verlander has enough there to pillow the blow a little bit if he does have a bad start.
Absolutely. But yeah, Logan Webb, Cy Young, that's an easy pick.
I think so.
An MVP for this team.
Yeah, Matt Chapman was really good for this team last year. Matt Chapman was a bit on decline. Like he was lingering out there in the free agent market late because he had started sliding a little bit with Toronto in his last year or two. So I think Matt Chapman and the Giants are just a good marriage, and that's why they continued their arrangement. I think he'll continue to put up really good numbers, and we already know the defense is a sure thing. So I have a hard time initially not going to Chapman, but I think if anybody is going to surprise me on this roster, Patrick Bailey has been kind of awesome since he took over the role. I think it's very underappreciated. The catching position offensively, you understand that the numbers are relative to, the position. Patrick Bailey could be an all-star. Like, I don't have to squint very hard to look at that. And so I think maybe Patrick Bailey jumps out this year and surprises some people and puts up some big numbers and gets some name brand on there.
Yeah, Fangraphs projects him with 5.1 FWAR, which is the highest in that starting of all the position players on the opening day roster. So yeah, Patrick Bailey, that's a really good pick. We can throw Willy Adames in that conversation. It'll just be interesting to see how that transition over to San Francisco works out for him, if he can keep up the production, and whether what he did in Milwaukee is sustainable in a different ballpark like San Francisco. We'll see, but no, Patrick Bailey, that's a good pick.
It's a lot of expectations for Adames too. That'll be interesting to see how he handles it, because not only is he, the new guy on the block and getting the big money, he's been getting the money that's been in the rainy day jar on top of the fridge for a couple of years now too. So I think anybody who is going to come in and be the big free agent hitter splash for San Francisco is going to carry some weight of expectations. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that.
Absolutely. Kenneth, did you look at the City Connects?
I did have them pulled up. I don't love them.
If this is what it is, it's kind of
Yeah, but again, dude, I feel that way about so many of the City Connects. I'm the boring guy where I liked like Kansas City's and the Angels. I liked all of them that looked like baseball uniforms and not like, circus vendor outfits. Some of them just go kind of wild. And it's funny when you get to see like Tony La Russa wearing reverse pinstripe uniforms and everything. Like, but dude, they have just been inundated. You see them all over the place, and so I'm kind of ho hum on the City Connects.
Question here from Patrick Lyons: is that an upgrade or a downgrade over the previous City Connects?
I say downgrade.
Yeah, it's kind of a lateral move, in my opinion.
Fair. Yeah, that's probably fair too.
Yeah, yeah. I can understand that these ones. It's kind of a weird one where it looks like that's something you'd buy at like Hot Topic, and just like kind of the graffiti font. I'm walking by this in the mall, and I'm like, I'm ashamed. I'm going to the GameStop. I'm going over.
Right.
I'm going over to the little sports store or something else. I'm going over to the Payless.
I'm
The
going
JC
over to
Penney's.
I'm going over to the Claire's to get my ears pierced. That's how much you don't care for these jerseys. Again,
Yeah,
man, like they're fun on this. I kind of wish it was like the what was it? The turn ahead the clock jerseys
yeah,
way back in the day, you know. But there was just that brief glimpse of these jerseys, and then they moved on to something else. So I don't know. I'm ready for something new outside of just City Connect jerseys because right now these are just looking like it was on. This looks like an old Nickelodeon Guts jersey.
yes. That's it.
Yeah.
Mark Summers is about to answer you,
Yeah.
give you a weird little question.
I'm pretty sure I've seen this jersey and it was once covered in gack.
I saw a kid climb through some giant nose to
Get
get a flag.
Man, he conquered that that aggro crag.
Yeah, it's these designs are always weird for a lot of these.
Yeah,
There you go. San Francisco Guts. Perfect, Patrick. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, but I don't know, it's not as bad as some other ones, I guess, but it's definitely not a top, choice
Yeah,
one.
the wavy lines mess with my eyes, and I don't like it.
I kind of like that part. Like it's got a weird kind of sonic sound wave, like an acoustic kind of bouncing reverberation look to it, and the pattern is interesting to it. I don't know what purple has to do with San Francisco. Yeah, maybe there's the thing that I like is there's context to these jerseys that gets brought up, and I appreciate that point. Seeing them though, there could be context, there could be appreciation for the history and the lore of a place. It can still be done in an ugly way, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how I feel. And what are the pants going to be too? That's the next question. Because
Yeah.
is this going to be a blackout acoustic wavy pant all the way down?
Probably.
Hmm.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Orange socks.
Yeah.
Orange pants.
It's
About
getting
that?
off the rails a little bit with the City Connects and this episode.
They go into like softball, corporate softball uniforms sometimes. It's weird.
I dig that, dude. I got a flying dog astronaut on my softball jersey. So who am I to talk? A dachshund in an astronaut uniform.
Speaking of other league City Connects, let's talk about the Rockies, who are also getting theirs here pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
There was supposedly people using the Nike Air Maxes that have kind of been released. There's the shoe, and the one that they released for the Washington Nationals kind of matched up with the color scheme and design. And so folks are hypothesizing then that the shoes that have been released for the Rockies are hinting towards what the Rockies are probably going to go with. And it kind of looks like they're going with kind of like a sunset type motif is what you kind of get from it with the light blues, the oranges,
Yeah,
things.
maybe. And I mean, being Colorado people, we're expecting to just have the Colorado like state flag logo or 5280 just kind of slapped all over
Please
this.
no.
So like I'm not holding my breath for it necessarily, and if anything, it's welcome to colorful Colorado, like the little patch that they have right now on the sleeve, and turning around and incorporating that as the whole fashion. My joke that I had is Colorado just did a big switch on its license plates and its structure, and like before that was the license plate. That's what the jersey is inspired by. So now they have like 15 choices. I didn't know what they were going to go with, so that was the joke. But
There's the little one with the little dinosaur, little stegosaurus that kind of hints
yeah.
at those same colors.
Maybe, yeah. It's going to be whatever. Personally, the Rockies need to bring back the 2000s uniform set. Is what it needs to be. They need to refigure the actual uniforms itself because it's boring and it's dry and it needs some changing up. Not just a City Connect.
Or do one of those, celebrate the history of baseball in Denver or Colorado.
Sure. You need a
there's so
Denver
much you
Bears
could
fan.
do. Yeah, there's so
Yeah.
much you could do to implement those, kind of like the Texas Rangers did. There's so much they could do, but
Nationals will rock Montreal with the
yeah,
Expos every now and then. Like, yeah, there is a lot of Colorado baseball history that could absolutely be acknowledged in lieu of the City Connects or something like that. I'm 1000%. Patrick bringing up the White Elephants for those that know
yeah,
Matt Rafflinger too, and his association with stuff like that. Like, there is a lot of really good history, and any Saber folks that you catch, you'll hear all about it. It's awesome. Um, that would be better to reflect and show to the fan base than what the city or the state license plate is.
yeah. Or if you really want to just move some merch, just make them Broncos jerseys.
Yeah, dude, and like
Just make Broncos jerseys, and boom, there you go.
that would hit so hard. Like everybody would be all over that. But so the catch about this is new Broncos jerseys, pretty butts.
Yeah,
It would
weird
have to be
designs in there.
it would have to be old Broncos jerseys too. But
Yeah, just
we're spending
that
too much time on the City Connect.
classic orange, but yeah.
Yeah, I look up the early or the 2000s Rockies jersey sets with like the pinstripe road unis. They need to go back to some things because they had it before and they don't now.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Not
but
fun. Their roster.
yeah, this one's been highly debated among Rockies fans, and no, this is where we're a little bit more tuned in from the weekend as the rosters have been getting winded down here. Big news right as we were about to start recording. Rockies make another weird outfield move. They picked up Mickey Moniak, who had been released by the Los Angeles Angels, former top draft pick. Rockies pick him up on a 1-year deal, add to their outfield mix, and it just adds more questions to what the Rockies are exactly doing with their roster after 6 straight losing seasons, back-to-back 100-loss seasons.
Mm-hmm.
They keep talking the youth movement, that it's time to see how our guys are doing and start this youth movement. So let's add 34-year-old Nick Martini to the roster. We'll option Zac Veen to the minors. Chase Dollander isn't going to make the opening day roster. And I guess Sam Hilliard's future's up in the air now. What's going on?
There's a lot to unpack with this. And Astro, I'll kind of address your question with this one that no, it's not a minor league deal. And this is what makes it even weirder is when we talk about the Rockies, the first question is really what's the difference between Nolan Jones and Mickey Moniak? Why not just roll the dice with kind of what you had in the first place? So there's a lot to unpack from the Rockies side of it. But when it comes to Moniak in particular, this is a kind of scummy baseball move where he won his arbitration hearing during the offseason, but before it became a guaranteed invested into the season, Angel said, no thanks, not for that price, and cut him outright and saved themselves the vast majority of it. So the Rockies, I feel like, got a little fortunate to land Moniak, even though he's not a good fit for the roster, if that makes sense. Because they were already dedicated to not playing the right option there in Zac Veen and going with somebody like Nick Martini, which all you can do is scratch your head at right now. But now Moniak is at least an equivalent of like a Nolan Jones worth giving some playing time to see what you got. And the Rockies just happened to get Moniak when they had, an open spot. That's kind of the way I'm looking at this.
Yeah. So to break this all down, the timeline of events.
Yeah.
So the Rockies have Tyro Estrada as their starting second baseman, free agent signing, because they just need a stopgap until Amador or Ritter, somebody's ready.
AKA the offseason.
Yeah, they get him. Unfortunately, he gets hit in the wrist, breaks his wrist with a pitch. Rockies immediately panic, saying, oh, what are we going to do now? We need Kyle Farmer, veteran signing. He was going to be our utility guy. We'll just slot him in at second base for now. We need to find a new utility guy. Okay. Rockies had guys in camp, Kenneth, that could have filled this role. Owen Miller, Aaron Schunk. You had Greg Jones in the system, who was picked up by the Chicago White Sox today off waivers. So there's options there. Instead, they shock everybody and trade Nolan Jones to the Cleveland Guardians for utility man Tyler Freeman, who hasn't really exactly been the best offensively in his 3-year career parts of 3 years with the Guardians, but they liked him because of his defensive versatility and ability to put the ball in play with good walk rate, good low strikeout rate, versatility. He can play the outfield as you need to. Okay, well, Kenneth, there was an opening in left field. What should the Rockies do at that point?
Well, they have this guy named Zac Veen, who was their former first-round pick, 9th overall, that was once sold as the face of the franchise, and he's been tearing it up in spring training. So naturally, you just cleared space for it, but instead they turned around and assumed that Nick Martini was going to be the guy after they traded Nolan Jones away back to Cleveland to pick up Tyler Freeman. And so everybody was pretty bummed because it was going to be Nick Martini heading into it. But now Mickey Moniak, as we mentioned, cut loose by the Angels. And so they basically made Moniak into Nolan Jones, while Zac Veen is still going to be sitting in the minors behind people he shouldn't be behind, because this isn't a very good team that should just be giving playing time to some young guys, you know?
And I think the crux of it with the Rockies is, are there things Zac Veen still needs to work on and develop? Absolutely. But that's the nature of being a baseball player in general. There's guys on the big league roster now that need to work on things. And
Tovar, Doyle,
Yeah. And then for the Rockies, Bud Black and Bill Schmidt to come out and say, well, he struck out too much and he needs to continue to improve hitting with runners in scoring position and continue to improve on some things. Understandable, but for those to be the reason to option him so that you can go with some of these other guys, flawed thinking. And I think it's justifiably upset fans.
Yeah.
They're hard moves to justify.
Britton Doyle was kind of terrible in 2023 offensively. He hit 203. He had a 53 OPS plus. He showed some signs every now and then, but there were big, long stretches of lack of production from him. And then in 2024, he was awesome. Took a giant leap. Was a 2020 guy pushing 30-30 kind of guy. Really looking like an all-star player now right away. But he had to suffer some pretty poor performance and some bumps of just learning how to play in the big leagues. Let Zac Veen do that. Just why? There's nothing more to that. You have somebody that you believe in, has a pedigree behind it, and you have a blueprint with somebody who just kind of turned the corner going down the same path. Why do you need Nick Martini? You're going to be, pushing 100 losses this season. Nick Martini isn't going to save you from being, isn't going to turn you into a 500 team or any close to that. So that's the head scratching part out of all this with the Rockies. And yes, Mickey Moniak is thrown there somewhere in the middle too.
Yeah, because it felt like they had a choice between two young players. They went with Jordan Beck, which great. Let him continue to just figure things out, but he didn't have a great spring. He picked it up near the end, but so did Nolan Jones, and you decided to trade him away. I wouldn't be as upset with Veen getting sent down if Jones was still on the roster.
Yeah.
I was okay with the idea of Martini on the roster. Okay, veteran guy off the bench, can give you a good at bat. Perfect, but that's the role he needs to fill. Instead, we're looking at him and Sean Bouchard and Mickey Moniak splitting time in the other outfield spot, spotting Britton Doyle as needed. There's so much cycling through trying to rest guys. It's not improving the team in the way that this team needs to kind of start processing their rebuild.
Yeah. I guess my whole thing with Nick Martini, and it's going to come out not liking the guy, but I'm indifferent either way. My whole thing with Nick Martini is you already have Nick Martini on your roster, and his name is Chris Bryant. He can't play anywhere else. You're going to have to relegate him to a corner. It's going to be just the bat that you're hoping anything for. And Nick Martini, you don't need to take a chance on that because you're already stuck with committing doing that to Chris Bryant and at-bats for him. Now, if it was going to be strictly a bench role and you're here to see two lefties a week, for one at-bat each on Tuesdays and Thursdays, that's your role. Sure. I don't want Zac Veen missing playing time, and I want Nick Martini to kind of soak up some of that that's left over on the side of the sink. But no, that's not what the plans were from the top down. It's to get a decent chunk of playing time out of somebody like Nick Martini and Sean Bouchard. And again, that just brings it right back to, but why?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at with the Rockies.
We already had a Nick Martini. His name was Jake Cave. We went through that in 2024, who was supposed
You
to.
knew it was going to be somebody. Dude, you
Yeah.
knew it was going to be somebody this year. I think a lot of people's money was on Keston Hira,
It was Martini from the start for me, I think.
Okay, sure. But that's the thing, dude. Like, there was Jake Woodford, there was Nick Martini, there was
Diego
Keston Hira.
Castillo.
Yeah, dude, who was the dude that was doing the backflips after striking guys out with splitters?
Jeffrey Yon.
Yeah, dude, you knew it was going to be somebody out of the organization this year. And so Martini just is that guy. Go out, don't buy a Nick Martini jersey because they're going to be available for like $6 a year on eBay. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I'll put it right next to my Mike Moustakas jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, you can't help but you can be upset with the Rockies, but also don't be surprised. Like, I'm not surprised by any of the decisions, but we'll see. No, it's like
it's head scratching, dude. All of it is just it's so head scratching. And then when we talk about the sequence of events with this, like, first of all, it's no longer the LOL meme of you traded Nolan Jones back to the team you got him from. It's now you're getting caught up in Mickey Moniak on a discount. You got caught shopping in the bargain bin at the dollar store, like, kind of thing. Like, that's now fully the reputation that you have earned with the way you've conducted your business heading into this season. And if I'm a Rockies fan, I'm sitting there looking at it and it's like, dude, you don't hear anything from this franchise from November until like January. You hear nothing from them aside from one interview at the winter meetings, or they'll turn around and immediately grab an Owen Miller for cash, something like that. And then all of a sudden the season hits and they have to do this scramble and panic and go out and get a Tyler Freeman because they've also lost faith in Nolan Jones. Or last year, go out and sign Jurickson Profar, or 2 years ago, whatever that is. This crap happens all the time with them. And if they're not going to go out and address it, then it's very fair to question if they're, how they conduct their business, because it just keeps happening to them. And no other team in baseball deals and struggles with the same type of problems that the Rockies do.
Yeah, it's a lot of just spinning the wheels because the things are there. There's prospects to be excited about. Zac Veen. We've talked about Chase Dollander. Yeah, maybe not quite ready. There's things to develop. And, if he made the opening day roster, great. If not, he's one of those cases where, there's things he can work on still, but he probably could have worked on them at the big league level still.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this talent to be excited about, and then it's just continually, here's 34-year-old, here's another 30-year-old, here's an over-the-hill guy.
Yeah. There was a time where Eleris Montero looked like he could possibly be a 40 home run guy. You needed to start finding out what you had with him. And boy, did they play that game with Montero more than maybe anybody else. And now he's not even in the country anymore. And he had something like 300 at-bats to his name as Rocky to show for it. Like, that's the feeling of the way that they conduct their business, but it drags on for 3 years. And so if this is the ground floor of that with Zac Veen, that's going to piss a lot of Rockies fans off. And that's what everybody's worried about.
Here's a evergreen quote, and you can try and guess what player what player they're talking about that was added to an opening day roster. I think he's the type of player that can come off the bench, give you a good at bat, and get you a hit, Rockies manager Bud Black said. He's wired to be aggressive with the bat, which is always a good thing for a pinch hitter. We feel very confident in his ability to play first base, and he can move around the diamond. Who was that about?
Feels like Martini when throwing first base in there.
It was Josh Fuentes in 2020 in place of Brendan Rodgers.
I forgot about Fuentes. That's been a minute. Wow, yeah. Dude. Yeah,
evergreen quote.
That's a good one to pull from the archives because, dude, they fall in love with a Josh Fuentes instead of really just seeing the plan through. And Why? Why? Nobody else in baseball is really going for these guys other than for depth options. And you're feeling like you just figured out the perfect corner to cut, Like that's the way that they feel like they're going about it. And then they end up with egg in their face and everybody's still laughing at them to this day. I don't know how to finish that thought.
Yeah, it bring back the bargain bin. You're shopping in the bargain bin and then feeling like you got a steal.
Yeah, right. Dude, I got 2 Howard the Duck DVDs for the price of one. Like I didn't even need one of them, but that's the thing. So
They
like
even censored the weird. They even had the uncensored weird version of the Lady Duck.
yeah. So it's, dude, like I don't get it. I think that this team is going to be awful this year. I think the Rockies are going to lose. I don't know what the number is that I settle with, but I'm well into like the 105 territory with this team. And so like that's how little I think of this team heading into this year. So I don't know. We've gotten our grievances out of the way. Let's I guess get on to the subject with them.
Yeah, really quick as this episode's already running long, but that's okay. We got nothing else to do. We're only here once a week.
Right.
But
Come hang out. Come hang out,
Spurts
everyone.
mentions there, history does show us losing 100 times 3 years in a row is the quickest way to win the World Series. Unfortunately, the draft picks don't come, and the draft process has not worked out for the Rockies. But hey, in order to win, Kenneth, you have to break some eggs.
Hey, maybe Verducci's going to come out and label the Rockies, the 2028 World Series and out of Sports Illustrated. Problem is, Sports Illustrated doesn't even make a magazine anymore. So that would be the irony of the whole thing.
We'll write one up ourselves.
There we go.
But when you get down to this team, because like I said, there's interesting players to like root for and look at. Continued growth of Brenton Doyle, Tovar, Tolia, Jordan Beck. 4 guys. Hunter Goodman can be thrown into that mix as well. So there's 5 guys that are part of that homegrown crew that are developing and have a lot of upside, along with the bullpen with a lot of young, exciting arms. They've got the pieces in place. It's just the unwillingness to finish out the rest of the puzzle with maybe committing to some other pieces.
I think well, I don't know. This is where it becomes a lot to unpack. They wanted an aircraft carrier to carry all these prospects and young emerging pieces, and they thought they had that. And that's
back hurts.
Yeah, all the time. But like they're missing some competent pieces around. One thing with the Rockies is like they're not porous at generating some talent. There's some talent around the league, and I think for the longest time, everybody looked at it and said, "Nah, it's a byproduct of Coors Field." Everybody is Navy Perez until they're not, if they're wearing a Rockies jersey. That narrative has changed a little bit, but man, have they sucked at spending the money to put good talent around those young emerging pieces. And now those pieces are just mostly still too young and inexperienced to be a winning ball club, and the money that they spend is actively detrimental. Like that's the state of this roster right now.
The extensions that they've been tied to have been blocked, created log jams and blocked some of the prospects we've talked about before that are no longer with this team or having a hard time cracking through. It's because you're just jammed up in so many areas that it gets hard, where some guys break through simply out of necessity.
Yeah, Michael Tolia, I think, is a good example of that. And, Tolia, I think, is divisive. I think a lot of people are looking at him as possibly an MVP for this team this year because he showed probably the best pure pop out of anybody last year. And that's been there for him the whole time. That said, though, it was finally the end of the Montero experiment and whatever else they were thinking with first base, because they monkey with that position probably more than any other position on the diamond. That finally forced Tolia into getting his make or break last year, and he showed it. So I have a hard time even saying Tolia is a success story, though, because they waited a long time to figure out what they had with Tolia. And you're still kind of wondering now, can he replicate the success he finally found last year?
No, can he find the consistency with the pop?
Yeah, even the way they conducted their business in finding a success story, it still doesn't feel, that palatable.
Yeah. And that feels like with some of these guys bouncing them around to figure out, oh, how do they fit into the puzzle? Well, it shouldn't take you 3-4 years of yanking a guy back and forth before you find him a spot.
Yeah. I feel confident in 3 of these 9 positions on an everyday basis, and that's Ryan McMahon, Ezekiel Tovar, and Bretton Doyle. I assume Tolia is gonna be in there, and Chris Bryant, whatever, when he's not on the IL, he will be in the lineup. But yeah, I'm looking at 3 positions that I for sure know will be getting 400 at bats this year, or 3 players, I should say.
Yeah.
The rest of it, very much up in the air.
Yeah. A lot of.
That's why Zac Veen should be in the equation, but man, he's an Albuquerque.
Yeah. But yeah, we look at this roster and we'll wrap them up here real quick because we still got to touch on the Padres real quick. But when you look at this roster, who would you see as the team MVP this year?
Bretton Doyle. It's that good. I hope it continues to develop and continues to trend upwards offensively. I'm scared that it could drop off pretty significantly because 2023 showed some real flaws. But Doyle could be a really exciting player and borderline star in this game. And in 2025, if he takes another step towards that direction, that's easily the best player on this team, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, I go with Ezekiel Tovar. It just where he is at his career right now, there's still a lot of room for growth. The strikeouts have got to come down. He's got to improve on that plate discipline because we know he's got the pop in his bat, led the team in home runs. He could honestly afford to be a little bit more aggressive on the base paths, swipe some bags. He's got a lot of those tools in a budding young superstar, continuing the long line of shortstops for the Rockies. In his this will be his 3rd full season. This would be a really a defining year for him in terms of just growing because he's with the Rockies for a while. He's cemented in for several years, and
great extension.
The team is relying on him, and so he's got to be that MVP for me.
Credit where it's due on the extension for the Rockies. The only reason I think that these are the only 2 right answers is the way I would look at it. Real quick, the adjustments that Doyle showed last year, because strikeouts were a huge problem with him, are more encouraging to me than Tovar, because Tovar gets away with his strikeouts because he's going to be a free swinger and makes a ton of contact no matter what. Yeah. So I think that it's just too inherent in his game. So I trust the strikeouts to continue to go down more with a Doyle than a Tovar. And that's the only reason why. That said, these are easily the 2 best pieces on their roster right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then there's a lot of fun stuff in the bullpen, but nothing to the caliber of your core lineup guys. Real quick, as funny as it is to pick one for the Rockies, who would be their Cy Young?
I think Dollander shows up and immediately is hands and tails above or better than everybody else. Like, I think the numbers will be okay-ish and very condensed to about a half season's worth of work, 3/4 of a season maybe. But I think it's going to be just kind of that much better. Also, from what I assume is going to be a pretty putrid rotation. So I think it's going to be a pretty low bar that he'll have to clear.
Yeah, I think for me, Ryan Feltner, if he can just continue to do what he did in the last his last 17 starts of the season last year, take that good stuff and continues it on, I think he can easily carry this. He's of the guys that are in the rotation at the moment, of the 3 veteran guys, and then Feltner, he's got the most high-end stuff right now. And so I think he's shown the ace stuff. Yeah. Now if he can just do it consistently, he could easily be that Cy Young.
I like him also for the prediction of breakout candidate. Because I feel like Feltner, and he's also somebody who really goes against the grain of the pitching philosophy of the Rockies. And I think it's also been a little public about it. So it's a bit more of a power pitcher, something that they don't always kind of fall in love with. And he stands out from a lot of, let's be honest, thumbers in the rotation. But I don't know really how high the ceiling is for Feldner. I think that this is a good and consistent major league pitcher that's going to have a good long career. Um, there's shown flashes of it, maybe a number 2 kind of guy,
Yeah.
but boy, he might just be, a 5, pretty straightforward. And so, Feltner's a good pick for breakout. I'll say that.
Yeah.
One other thing worth considering: Herman Marquez, if he's awesome, should not be eligible for this because he should be gone if the Rockies have any sense whatsoever.
He's going to have a 1.20 ERA, and they're going to sign him to a 6-year extension.
Man, that's great after 108 losses.
Quick guys on breakouts. Jordan Beck, he hopefully stays healthy and can find his stretch, really start hitting. Pays off what we've seen in him do in the minors, college career. And then really, I think just all the young guys in the bullpen. Your Seth Halverson, Luis Peralta, Victor Vodnik, Chivi, this slew of young arms coming up, and that showed up last season, and then now we're starting the year. A lot of good breakout candidates there in that bullpen.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting once the role gets removed from a Tyler Kinley or a Scott Alexander, which they'll inevitably be the closer at one point, who they start getting confidence later on in. But yeah, I think Veen is a really good one to bring up, even though we've touched on him. Dude, if he comes out and he's just that wild horse right away, he could catch fire and immediately be in the conversation right next to he just replaced Nolan Jones, because honestly, Jones was supposed to be a guy right now. So maybe they're desperate for it. Veen might be it, but Beck has that same opportunity.
Yeah. So there's a lot of fun stuff there with the Rockies. Really quick, any bold predictions? I think you already said they're going to lose a lot of games.
Yeah. There was a ton of losses in it. I thought I had something clever coming up for it, but then I got mad at the Rockies, so I kind of forgot what it was. But I think, I think Bud Black leaves before the season is over. I think Bud Black retires, and I think it's going to be in a dumb and ceremonial way. And I think that this is going to be the biggest news of the Rockies this year. And in the final week of the season, they're going to appoint Warren Schaefer as the interim manager for the last week or two or whatever, and then not even conduct a search for a manager in the offseason. And Schaefer will be the new manager heading into 2026. I think they have one more little dramatic soap opera in them, and I think that's it.
Yeah, it is quite out of the box thinking there. Yeah, I'm just not even going to try to top it. I was just going to say, Michael Tully hit 30 home runs.
Right. Maybe, but he'll just, the last 3 of them will be with Warren Schaefer as his manager.
Yeah. There's a question. Will Dick Monfort fire himself? I don't know, but he's thought about it.
There's been a lot of opportunity up to this point to do it. I'll say that. Just leave it at that.
Yeah, Colorado Rockies, don't expect much. I always say this over on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, over on the Effect by Altitude podcast. Hey, if you're ever going to become a fan of minor league baseball and you're a Rockies fan, now is the time. Go watch the minor league stuff. They're pretty fun.
I have a friend at work that he's a big Albuquerque fan, but I'm always telling him, watch this, dude, watch this. But overall, it's are we ever going to get there? It's
no.
I don't know that. We'll watch these guys.
But other stuff here before we move on to the Padres to close things out. Just a reminder, Blake Street Banner will have a 14-part series starting tomorrow on Thursday, covering the 30 greatest moments in Coors Field history. So a lot of fun stuff celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. You can go check that out from Blake Street Banner. Covering that this year. All right, this long episode. One last thing to round things out here. The San Diego Padres. We kind of dunk on them a little bit just because they're just kind of in this weird spot right now. But they got some hard news in these later days of camp where Darvish will start the season on the injured list. Was dealing with some elbow inflammation. He's gotten scoped out and everything. Hopefully it's nothing worse than just we'll need some rest and stuff. But as a result, I believe it was Kyle Hart and Randy Vasquez made their roster in place of him, or at least one of them did.
I know Hart did. Anyways,
but they're gonna be without Darvish here to start the season. How much does this affect the Padres? They have Dylan Cease, they have Michael King at the top of that rotation. You lose Darvish now. How much does this affect this team?
we started the episode talking about Jordan Montgomery, and ultimately I landed on it's not that big of a blow because you weren't hoping for that much from him, in the first place. It is a lot the opposite for San Diego because you don't have much wiggle room to lose anybody that can pitch, especially starters and especially, high profile. We're expecting you're in our top three this season. So it's big. They just, again, man, the Padres have been on this wild ride for the past couple of seasons. The Bills come due for some of their risks, and they're just not as good as they were in previous years. That doesn't mean they can't still, maybe go all the way. There's some potential there for that, but you can't lose a Darvish and expect to go all the way with how thin this roster is right now.
Yeah, they have Cease and King, and then Nick Pivetta will still line up there in that fourth spot, and then Hart and Vasquez both nab those final two spots in the rotation. But like Norm mentions here on YouTube, for San Diego, depends if they decide to trade King and or Cease. If they keep everyone, they can squeeze in as a wild card. And that's just going to depend on how things progress for them over the course of the season. If they're in contention around the trade deadline, how many games do they have to be within a playoff spot to not be sellers at the deadline?
I don't know if I have like a number in mind, but it's got to be within some shouting distance. Like if they're hanging out with the Rockies and the Marlins, I think that's the only way that they kind of go full-fledged seller mode. Like if they're one of the 3, 4, 5 worst teams in the National League. And even then, I mean, with the way that the playoffs are now and the wild card seeding, being the fifth worst team in the National League still might be 4 games back, and that's plenty close enough, So, I think realistically, the wheels have to completely fall off. You have to be without Machado, Tatis, Cronenworth for the rest of the year, and you see the writing on the wall that there's no way it's happening, and then they go full fire sale. But the interesting thing with the Padres, man, a 2-week stretch in July is going to probably be crucial for the direction that this team goes. Because if they're playing bad baseball and they find themselves 6 games out, after being 2 games up in the last wild card spot heading into the trade deadline, I think that's when they really go ham on pulling off some of these trades. So it's going to be a last second thing, I think, with the Padres.
Yeah.
Unless they're balling out.
Yeah. Because look at this, their opening day roster starts to shape out. A lot of just it's weird how it's working out. Martin Maldonado, or Maldonado's going to win a roster spot at a camp. Jose Iglesias is making the roster at a camp.
Who else did they have behind these guys, though? That's the whole thing. It's not that you're falling in love with a Jose Iglesias because, oh my gosh, that's the missing piece that we've been missing all these years. It's a cheap, affordable veteran. That's why Maldonado still has a spot, and to a degree, that's the position that they put themselves in.
Yeah, I believe they selected Gavin Sheets. Jason Hayward will make the team. There's a ton of guys that got optioned here within these last couple of days, like Connor Joe, who they had signed. Tercer Ornelas got optioned down to AAA. Who had been singing his praises good as well out there in left field. So they kind of Padres just had a weird spring. They're still in their weird position of how they're constructing this roster.
Yeah, and we sit here and we scratch our head over the Rockies, but you at least understand why the Padres are weird, right? You've watched them over the past years completely gut their farm system in the name of trying to win a championship, and now, things are a little unclear because of it. That's what happens when you trade away essentially the top 5 rounds of all of your draft classes for the past 5 years. It does get a little weird. I'm curious. I think the Padres will be close enough come September, and then they'll either have an epic collapse or an epic push. And either way, I get the feeling that this ownership story is just going to get worse and worse. And it's either going to be going into full sell mode and, new era of the Padres, which I think will probably be the case. Man, I'm worried if they get a Marlins group, though, because if somebody comes in, there's a lot of money on the books for whoever tries to buy this team. Do they want to pay a Fernando Tatis Jr.? I'm curious what the future of this team is going to be after 2025, because we pretty much know in 2025 they're going to scratch and claw and spit and do whatever they can to get into the playoffs, probably with whatever they have left in their organization. That's kind of the team.
Weird situation. You look at this roster; they've got this projected lineup. Notable names that you see in there: Arise, Tatis, Merrill, Machado, Bogarts, Cronenworth, who will be pretty much at second base. Yuli Gurriel is going to make the team. There's penciled in to make the team.
Oh, yeah. The hair.
Brandon Lockridge won that job in left field. Then you've got Elias Diaz behind the dish, and then Hayward and Gavin Sheets will be on the lineup. So it's a lot of interesting things of just moves of them on the budget trying to put together the most competitive product they can with what they have to, like you're saying, scratch and try to get into the playoffs.
I'm curious what your thought is on this. In lieu of like a Cy Young or everything, who's the X factor for this team? Like, who's the most important player? Not necessarily the most valuable player, best pitcher or anything. What has to work for the Padres to be a playoff team this year?
Man. Yeah, that's a tough one.
I have 2.
Yeah, I'm looking at like Jackson Merrill.
Yep, that's
one of them.
You need Jackson Merrill to continue to be a guy, and the other one is Xander Bogaerts. You need to get something out of him.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money that's not going away, and you need Xander Bogaerts to be some sort of cushion for Machado and Tatis.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I look at this roster. And if either of those two don't work out, if both of them don't work out this year, I think that magnifies the problems for this roster.
Yeah, like we had mentioned before, if then they lose out on a Michael King or a Dylan Cease, you get a lot more doubtful about their pitching, even more so than you already are losing Darvish.
You got to think those guys are as good as gone after this year, right? Why else would you be trying to trade him? Yeah. It's not that you don't like a Dylan Cease or a Michael King. These were your top 2 pitchers for the playoffs. Michael King had one of the best pitched playoff games kind of, in history last year. They would keep them if they could, but it's very clear they can't afford it. So you already know that your pitching is going to be objectively worse in 2026 than it is in 2025. Like, there's just a lot of questions about this organization right now.
Yeah.
And it obscures a good ball club, and that's the sad part.
Yeah. A lot has to go right. They can't afford many things to go wrong for them.
No.
They have to stay healthy. They have to perform, because the alternatives not that great.
Yeah, that's what makes a Tiso or Nellis so fascinating, is they need a guy like that to come out of nowhere a little bit. And honestly, what's kind of funny about this is we sit here and we bag on the Rockies for acquiring Mickey Moniak, and you're looking at it, it's just like, Jesus, Rockies, like every time you were just so embarrassing. Dude, the waiver priority is the only reason why the Padres do not have Mickey Moniak on this roster right now. Like, the prime cut steak for them, where it's just like, oh, a young guy with upside, a past potential, and he's affordable. Hell yeah. Like, they were already, that's their jam right now. And not getting Roki Sasaki that was their golden goose out of all of this,
Yeah. But did Mickey Moniak, did he play shortstop?
Yeah, that's fair. In high school, maybe we can at least do that. So, But yeah, I guess that is the fraternity requirement for San Diego.
Yeah, it's just so many questions with them, and we'll see how it works out for them. But they have a tough road ahead of them to try and, again, hopefully beat up on the Dodgers and then get beat up by the Rockies somehow.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a weird year for them.
Yeah, dude, at least one play or wild card you assume is coming out of the West. When you talk about the possibility of two, you're looking at the Padres, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the Giants. Maybe you can talk yourself into that somehow. But you're pretty much looking at the Padres when we're talking about another potential playoff threat from this division. But I think it's very clear, and if you disagree, say so, or in the comments, mention they're a big class below the Diamondbacks, I think, because of the depth issues. I think
Yeah.
star for star they match up, but the Diamondbacks are clearly in a much healthier spot. And then on top of that is the Giants, the Dodgers, who are just on cloud nine up there in their own little world. But dude, that lack of depth, that's the difference for the Padres right now from them and the Diamondbacks. I really believe that.
For sure. Real quick here, MVP for this team. I know we talked about it, we touched on it just a smidgen, but who would you name as this MVP for this team?
I think Tatis, if he puts together a full year, it's special. It could be, pushing for a league MVP.
Yeah, or like said, Manny Machado could dip back into what he was. He still has that in him, but yeah, I think Tatis is a little bit more confident answer to there we go.
Machado we underappreciate how well and how gracefully Machado has aged. It's one of those swings where those don't come around very often. Sometimes they go full cargo and fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Machado, the hitter, has aged very well. So you appreciate that. It's just Tatis does so much well that it's hard not to say that.
Yeah. Cy Young Award. I think for me, I'm going with the King, Michael King.
And I will rule you. If anybody knows Ready to Rumble, that's what that's from. I like Michael King a lot. I think Michael King is really good, and I think Michael King is setting himself up for a fat payday this offseason. So I can't disagree with that. Side note, I would love if Matt Waldron turns out to be the Cy Young of this team because I am down with the knuckleballer being the best pitcher for someone.
He's just got to get healthy.
Yep. Yeah. Do you need an oblique to throw a knuckleball? Let's be real. But yeah, I think King's legit, and as long as he stays healthy, that's the MVP for this team. If we want to talk about breakout, I think we looked at it that way a little bit with X factors and Jackson Merrill. Worth bringing up though, Robert Suarez could surprise some people and quickly become like, hey, this might be one of the 5 best closers in baseball kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think Suarez doesn't get as much attention because there's some big names on this roster, but dude's nasty.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of good talent out there in that. There's good names in that bullpen, but yeah, Robert Suarez, slotting in there. Go get some saves, buddy.
Man, just go out there and throw gas. Like the same way that Emmanuel Clase captivated people a little bit once they started watching him for real. Suarez, maybe not quite that degree because that Clase cutter is alien, but it's that caliber,
Yeah. So there's not many, but there's a couple of names that could really start to break out and be those good, solid players. Prediction for the bold prediction for the Padres here this season.
You know what? I'll say that they end up just missing out on the playoffs, and the bad luck just rolls forward because now they're like, if we didn't lose, let's say the misfortune really continues, and this is my bold prediction. They are in the playoffs at the trade deadline, and then injuries kill their last 2 months, and they end up just missing the playoffs by less than 3 games.
They're like the Angels that one year where they tried to go all in at the deadline, and then it just collapsed for them after.
I don't think they're going to be bringing in CJ Cron thinking that that's going to make all the difference in the world. So, but yes, something to that degree.
Yeah, no, that would be a good one. But Norm with a good take here. That San Diego gets the second wild card, then knocks out the Mets from the playoffs.
Irony.
There you go.
Yep. Maybe you can see a range of outcomes with this team, and I think more so than anybody else in the National League. is this a 91 win team, or are they just going to gut it and tear it down and finish the year with 75 wins? Like, both are very, very possible with this team right now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how San Diego handles themselves this year.
Absolutely. But hey, they always play well against the Dodgers at least a little bit over these last couple years.
Oh, dude, if they get knocked out and they end up ruining the Dodgers' hopes in some way, shape, or form, everybody's all about that. It's Dodger Elimination Day. That's what we're all really boiling down. I know somebody in the comments brought it up earlier, but
Yeah.
tomorrow is the start of hopefully Dodger Elimination Day some point this fall.
Yeah. You hope.
Yep.
But good old San Diego Padres. Just keep doing your thing. Hopefully it works out for them. But that'll bring this episode to a close. Been a little bit of a long one. Hour 50. Wow. We're
Mercifully.
almost halfway through Fellowship of the Ring.
We've had some watchers throughout this entire show and lots of commenters like Norman Astro. So thank you guys. I mean, it makes it a lot of fun just talking ball, but knowing that we're putting some good stuff out there for fans that really are into that stuff. It's always fun, man. So thank you guys for watching.
For a podcast that initially was conceived as a 30-minute show.
Yeah.
Blake Street Banner did not account for our talkative natures.
Next time they got to put it in the contract when we got to shut up. Bye.
Yeah. But we appreciate everybody tuning in. Kenneth, where can the folks find you?
You can find me over at Purple Row, and I'll also be hanging out on Twitter at KW1988.
You can find me over on Twitter at Skyler Timmins or over on Blue Sky stimmins13.bsky.social. And also find me over at purplerow.com, writing Wednesday rock piles and starting up game coverage over there at Purple Row. You can also find me doing stuff for Fans First Sports Network. Be sure to follow Blake Street Banner on your social media platforms. Follow along here on YouTube and your favorite podcasting platforms. A lot of other shows and banters, and everybody's gearing up in this Rockies ethos to get ready for the start of the season here.
Happy baseball season, Skyler.
It's fun. Be sure to leave out your, I don't know, what do you leave out for Rob Manfred?
Thumbtacks on the floor so he stubs his toe when he walks in my kitchen. I'm going to go with that.
Poor guy. Every time I have to laugh every time he gets booed at the draft.
I know. I got
like, you feel bad for him in like just an instance. You're like, it's funny. Like, look, he's just coming out to announce a player. You don't need to boo him in that instance.
It's funny in that respect, but at the same time, when you make your living as a public labor negotiation lawyer, you're kind of setting yourself up for some scrutiny. So,
so you can leave out a Dodger dog, and you can leave him out of Coors or something.
Yeah,
there you go.
We'll leave out some Rocky Mountain oysters for Rob Manfred.
There you go.
Under the baseball bat tree.
But that'll do it here on Best of the West. Until next time, I'm Skyler Timmins. That's Kenneth Weber. And always remember, the best is yet to come.